All right. Hello, everyone. We are here today with Gary Schocker for another episode of Flutespresso, brought to you by Flute Specialists. I'm very happy to be here today, sharing a cup of coffee with Gary.
Mine is mint tea, actually.
Oh, minty. Okay. Good to know. I'm also a tea drinker, but I know we have a lot of coffee drinkers watching. So those who don't know and probably should know, Gary Schocker is a really wonderful flutist, teacher, performer, also harpist and pianist, and really prolific composer. So we'll get into all of that definitely, and kind of talk about, everything you've been up to, and we have some questions from people. And I do want to encourage anyone who is watching to comment with questions that you might have for Gary as well. And I did want to mention for anyone who is watching, as always, we like to do a little Flutespresso giveaway. So if you just comment below with maybe where you're watching from and what is in your drink today, we will give away a copy of one of Gary Schocker's pieces that we have in stock.
That's nice.
Yeah. So we'll just jump right in. One, I wanted to just see, what you've been up to in the last little bit. I know you've been doing some Zoom masterclasses, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. What's coming up with that and how it's all going for you.
Sure. Well, I've been doing a master class at Monastery in upstate New York for, I don't know, like since 2002 or something. We've had about 50 some classes there. It's crazy because for a while we were doing 3 every summer, but of course we can't do that. So we thought, let's do them online. And it's been great. I mean, I never taught online before. I may have given 1 or 2 lessons, but I've learned so much from teaching online because you see the person right in front. Like when I teach a flute person, I don't generally want to be right in their face. So I can see much more from a different angle. And the sound isn't ideal, but I can hear it. And more importantly, I can see it. So it's really informed my teaching and my own technique. I feel like I've improved a lot in the past year and a half. We do these classes every month. If you go on my website, you can see the details and sign up if you like.
Okay, awesome, cool. Yeah, I feel like online teaching has definitely changed the way that we'll be teaching in the future. Right.
Yeah, I think so. I even have some students that live in New York, and they just, one person lives in Tribeca, which is, it's not that far on the subway, but it takes time. So she'd rather just keep doing it this way. So
yeah.
Okay. I think, of course, there's something about being in the room, and also being in the room. One thing I really like to do when I teach is play along, make up a second part, sit down at the piano or the harpsichord and play along with the students so they can hear the whole piece.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people ask me, how do you memorize everything? And I think part of it is people don't pay attention to the whole piece. Like so many people that they'll bring in the flute part to something and they've never even heard a recording, which just astonishes me because I think, well, if you're a musician, wouldn't you want to? It's kind of like, if you've got like several different foods on your plate, don't you want to eat all of them? Do you just want to eat the rice? Don't you want to know what it is? Because so much of music is how things relate to each other. It's totally really what it is. It's a conversation. So I advise always, you should play along, and now YouTube is such a treasure trove. You just pick anything you're working on, find a recording on YouTube, play along, hear the whole piece. It'll seep into your brain much more than if you try to actually think about which note comes next, which is lethal.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I love your metaphor about food. I feel like we can all relate to that. And you're absolutely right. Yeah. So that kind of brings me to the next point I wanted to talk about is, your students are very lucky. I know a lot of talented flutists who can also play piano or other instruments, but they're lucky to have you there to, play along and so that they can hear the full part in person as well, before they rehearse with pianists. So can you talk to us a little bit about maybe your upbringing with piano, with harp, and
Sure.
how how you balance all three.
When I was a child, my father was a music teacher, and he played almost every single instrument. He studied piano. In those days, they didn't call Juilliard Juilliard. It was called the Institute of Musical Art. And he went there and studied, and he then took up the harp. Then he got drafted in World War II, and he didn't want to be a bayonet instructor, so he learned how to play the piccolo. So he got into the band at West Point, which is why he wanted me to play the flute, because when I was 10 in whatever it was, 1969, it was kind of a serious time and concern, and so he didn't want me to get drafted. So I was given a flute so that I'd be able to play in the band. And but I started playing the piano when I was around, really before I was 3, I'm told.
Wow.
I found a funny article that's from a local paper. I'm from Easton, Pennsylvania, where the guy who wrote the article, I guess, knew my dad, and he was over, and apparently I knew what pieces I wanted to hear on records from the color of the label. So I knew the blue label was the habanera from Carmen, I guess. And so then after it played, I could go over and pick out the notes on the piano, which I think is really cute. So but actually, speaking of picking out, I was very stubborn about learning how to read music. I didn't learn how to read until I was 11. Actually, this is maybe some good advice for younger players if you can't read or if you have trouble reading. I advise people always to look at pieces that you know. So if you can't read, look at, if you're a churchgoer, look at the hymnal and look at the hymns that you know by heart. And then look at the notes and play along with them, and you'll learn backwards, because that's what I did. Happy birthday. Not a religious person. It's into my head. Is that car at your house?
Probably. Is that loud?
That's all right. Yeah. So it's not in your room. That's the important thing. Yeah. So if you learn backwards like that, if you look at the music that you already know and play along with it, and that's what my dad did with me. One day I was playing the Haydn Serenade, and he said, "Look at the music." "Why do I have to look at it? I know it. I don't want to." He said, "Just look at it." So I looked at it and I played along. I was like, "Oh, I get it." And then I could just read because I made the connection.
Wow.
And then also, I think as a composer, when I started out, it was really hard for me to figure out how to notate things. And there's so many rules of notation, many of which I am not very good about when I do. And I do all my writing by hand. I don't use a computer program. But I've gotten better and better as I've done it more and more and more. But I think that's that's a good thing to try out if you're having trouble with your reading and also with your rhythm.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I love that. That's a lot of music to write by hand, I will say.
Yeah, I hold on. I just what happens with me sometimes is I just I have a lot of flutes, and I go through this thing where I'll play one and I think, wait a second, that would sound better with this head joint. No, that would sound better with this foot joint. And then I do this whole thing with all my flutes and, get them all out and mess around with them. And then also, if I can do something on one flute, I want to see what it's going to be like on another flute. And that also informs my technique because they are all different. And no flute is perfect. So it's always interesting to try to apply something to try it on a different instrument and see what happens. And it can be quite surprising, and you can learn a lot. But anyway, yesterday I was just like, I don't really feel like practicing. And so I wrote something. So this is what it looks like when I write something. And it's a lot of notes. You're right. I hate copying. I really hate copying. I had a friend here who was fixing some drapes, and she was in there sewing, and I was copying, and I think I probably would have rather done what she was doing. But it's exhausting, because all those little markings have to be exactly right. And then usually I hire a guy who puts it all on computer, which really helps me too, because then when I see it, I make so many more decisions. It just looks so different when it's in print.
Right. Cool. So you talked a little bit about your upbringing.
A lot.
Sorry,
I'm talking so much, but I went to the gym. I think I'm pumped.
No, that's awesome. We love that. That's what we want.
All right.
We want the energized Gary Schocker here. So a little bit about like your, how you started on flute and piano. What about harp? I feel like that is so unique. I see so many flutists who also play piano, but not really can play the harp.
I know one. There's somebody called Lisa Duke who came to a master class at the monastery once, and then she became a harpist. I think she still plays flute. I'm not sure. She lives down south somewhere. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's not that common. It's interesting though when you think about it, because physically both the flute and the harp require you to have your arms up a certain way.
Yeah.
So much of technique, I think, is understanding how to hold it. Because I just happen to have a flute here. How you hold your flute and how your hands are on the flute. And it's really interesting because I've discovered for me, and it seems to work for my students, that the connections are different in the two hands. So where you need to stay close in one hand is not where you need to stay close in the other hand. So a lot of people try to mirror the hand. Speaking mirror, this camera's driving me crazy because every time I look this way, my head goes that way. So I'm sorry. My head does really go straight on my body, but it doesn't look like it today. So if I do that, then I'll look stiff. So too bad. Anyway, so for example, in the right hand, you're really connecting through your 4 and 5. And in your left hand, you're really connecting through your 1 and 2. So you're connecting on the outer reaches of the flute. But most people I see just have this thing where the pinky is crazy high, and this is crazy high, or the thumb is really flat. That also comes from people playing in marching bands, so they have to keep their arms out like that, which is just murder on your technique. So the harp also, there are 2 different ways of playing the harp. There are 2 schools of thought about playing the harp. One where your arms don't touch the board, the other where your right arm touches the board. That's also exacerbated by this one particular teacher of the method who was very tiny. So she made all of her students hold their arms way up, which is not really the right way to go. Because, the higher your arms up, the more work it is. So there's a real relationship between how you have your arms and you have your ribs. This is like Alexander one-on-one, but if you go like that, you'll feel that your ribs lock. Mm-hmm. If you lock your ribs, your arms will ribs, so your arms will lock. So you don't want stiff arms when you play. And I find a lot of the releases here in my wrist, like that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, yeah, my dad played the harp, and I had zero interest in playing the harp because I loved my father so much, and he was such a great musician and teacher. But he tortured me with I'd be in the car and I'd think, how many Haydn string quartets are there? I don't care. What's the Liszt chromatic fingering? What's the French chromatic fingering? It was like, life was one long music lesson. So I really did not want to play the harp because it would have been something else I had to practice every day. As it was, I really didn't want to practice. I liked to play, but I remember I used to like the Three Stooges, and I'd watch the Three Stooges after school, and I was supposed to be practicing, and I'd go into this in my flute. So if you picked it up, there would be moisture inside. Not that he ever checked, but I was devious. So
that's so good.
Yeah, but anyway, what happened actually is my mom was very ill, and Emily Mitchell, who's a fabulous harpist that I've known for many years, was recording an album of my harp stuff. And I hadn't really written any harp stuff in years, but there was a lot of harp, flute, chamber music, so we did all that. And we were recording, and literally it was like the week my mom was, leaving this earth. And I was so moved by the sound of the harp, and weirdly, this piece that I'd written, I don't even know when I wrote it. I think I wrote it in early 1990s or something. And I didn't know it at all. And Emily was playing it. It was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. And it's so unlike anything I've ever written. So I went home and I immediately decided I gotta learn how to play it. So I rented a harp, and I've taught myself, for better or for worse. And I've been playing for 10 years now.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Lovely. Yeah, I hear some of your harp stuff on Facebook. It sounds really beautiful. Harp
Thanks. Well,
is gorgeous.
it's, it's such a different thing from the flute, because with the harp, it's all about how you approach and then release.
Mm-hmm.
And with the flute, of course, it's how you approach and release, but there's the sustain element. And the
Mm-hmm.
harp does that for you. So it's a very different vibe. Also, the sound of the harp comes through your body. It comes right through the back of the harp, goes right through your spine. So it's a different thing. But a lot of things are the same. A lot of the hand things, I think, are the same. You'll see when somebody plays the harp, after you're like, I can't deal with this thing. Okay, wait, I go this way. Forget it. I can't do it. Sorry. When you pluck, you don't want to pull away from the harp. You pluck, you have to immediately let your hand go.
Mm.
And it's very much like what I think about when I pick up the flute, because the connection again from my ribs to my wrists is great.
Yeah. Cool. So you're able to find like a lot of similarities and also differences between the flute and
Yeah, and the piano. It's what I do.
Yeah.
I try something out and I think, okay, well, what happens if I do that on the piano?
Mm.
And it's so instructive because, everything is tied to your core.
Mm-hmm.
So if your core isn't right, nothing's right.
Right.
And the breath is very important on non-breathing instruments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. So in addition to all of your performing and many different instruments that you're balancing, so you're also a teacher at NYU and privately. So tell us a little bit about your teaching philosophy and also what you look for in your prospective students.
What I look for, you mean when they come for lessons?
Yeah, or even like auditioning to attend.
Auditioning for me?
Yeah,
People don't have to audition for me.
yeah.
Come on, come all is my attitude.
Oh, I love it.
Unless somebody's a real pain. I fired only a couple people over the years. Literally. Just one was just really disrespectful, and the other was just never prepared. Didn't seem interested. Actually, there were three. One, the mother wanted the kid to take lessons. The kid didn't want to take lessons, and that doesn't interest me. But I learned from all my students. My technique is almost entirely based upon what I've learned from teaching. So when somebody comes for a lesson, I generally slow them down. I'm interested in seeing what their approach is to the instrument, because you can't play anything that's really technically challenging if you're building blocks. So usually if somebody comes, they're all nervous about having to play some great big thing, and they end up playing I'm a little bit. I like to make people go through simple handle, Elmon things, go and get into Bach. It's not about flying around the instrument. For me, the most important thing in playing is having the music come through me in such a way that when you hear my music, you hear something about who I am and how I feel. I'm not interested in the glossy stuff. I can play pretty much anything I want to play. I can play fast, but it doesn't really interest me very much because, it's fun to fly. Everybody likes to fly a little bit, but you really need to understand how to make a sound that is you. And I feel that that's missing a lot from people when I hear people. And I blame it a little bit on the modernization of the instrument, because the older instruments have a longer scale, especially the old Haynes flutes. And there are more harmonics in there, and they're harder to play, but they do so many things, And if you pick up a modern flute with a modern cut and a shortened scale, you can smack that flute. You can slam those low notes, and they'll come out. They won't come out on one of my flutes. So I teach everybody as though they're playing what I play. And I think it enriches the sound of the modern instrument.
Mm-hmm.
At least I believe that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have, do you have quite a bit of old instruments?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I have way too many flutes. I stopped counting them because I get depressed. But I have mostly what I play on are Haynes flutes. I like the Haynes flutes from the 1950s, although I do have one that's very old, from 1926, a beautiful gold flute. Unusual flute made actually by George Haynes, who went up to help his brother William out because Powell had left the Haynes company. So they made these 12 spectacular gold flutes. Mine is a seam tube, like an old Louis Lot. It's the only one I've ever seen or heard of like that. Number 9900. But usually I like the ones that are like from certain years. I guess it's like people like cars from certain years. Maybe because I grew up on a 24,000, I like the 24,000s.
Mm. Yeah, that's such an interesting thing because we have so many old Haynes flutes at Flute Specialists, and when people call about them, they're always looking for like a specific year, and I feel like it's different with different people. You know, like, oh, I had one from 76. Do you have any from 76?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, there was somebody working there then that was making things a certain way.
Right.
Yeah, I have a Powell that I like, a number 57, very old Powell. I have a Louis Lot. I have a bunch of old German flutes that I like because they're just like, what is that sound? It's so completely different from the American sound. So I like playing those sometimes.
Yeah. Cool. And you find time to play a lot of them, or are a lot of them just collectible?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I kind of rotate. I usually have the flute du jour, and it usually turns into maybe 3 or 4 different instruments that I play.
Okay.
So I rotate them, and you have to because the pads dry out. And, you know.
Right. Cool. That's so interesting to have so many flutes.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting. Sometimes I wish a big dumpster would just pull up out front and I could just like just keep one.
No.
It drives me crazy because the maintenance it's hard.
I'm sure, yeah.
Keep them working, but as my playing gets better and the little problems with them don't bother me as much. I used to like be insane about it's like people obsessing over a hangnail.
Yeah. Nice. So you kind of just choose based on maybe your mood for the day. You have so many different choices.
Yeah, and I just kind of, if I played one yesterday, I'm probably should play a different one today. And I really think it does stretch my technique.
I'm sure, yeah.
They just require different things.
That's incredible. All right, so you're a big flute collector.
Don't say that, no.
Yeah.
I don't.
You play lots of flutes.
I know a guy who's got like, I forget what he told me he has like hundreds of them. Gosh, so he's a big flute collector. I mean, I'm a big flute player.
You are a big flute player, especially if you're playing them all. You're right. It's not a collector. It's you're using them. So that's amazing. Thanks. So, I mean, you do all these things. You compose. We actually have a special treat for everyone watching. Hopefully, we'll get to premiere. Is it a premiere? A composition?
Yeah. Yesterday, I was practicing, and I was just like, I'm not in the mood, and and usually that means I need to start writing something. And I just wrote a piece. I wrote a nice harp piece a few days ago. I'm trying to learn it so I can post it. And I just got this idea in my head. I thought, oh, that would be really nice. And so I wrote this piece. So I sent it up to my friend who puts them together. Like I recorded on my phone. I record the piano part first. And then I put in my earbud. And I record simultaneously with the iPad. This is all a big Apple ad that we're doing here. And so then I can listen to the iPad in the earbud and play back on another recording on the phone. So I send them to him, and he's just kind of a brilliant guy with all of the video stuff, and he puts them together and sends them back. So he literally just sent it back at noon. So I haven't heard it yet, so I'm really I hope it sounds good.
Yeah.
Do it. If it's awful, I'm sorry. But it'll probably be fine. It seemed fine yesterday when I did it.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be great. I'm excited.
Good.
I'll download it and then I'll share my screen. So.
Okay,
But
great.
before we get there, I have a burning question that I feel like everyone has too. So you do all these things. How do you balance playing and composing and teaching? And then, what do you do when you're not doing anything musically related?
What else do I do, you mean?
Yeah.
I love garden plants. I have all my plants. I'm a good cook. I like to cook. I read a lot. I don't know. I go to the gym. Lately, I discovered I got these earbuds and they've sort of changed my life because I go to the gym and they have those spin classes and they're screaming and it's just like, I hate all that awful music that they play. I just listen to Mozart piano concertos and I am so happy.
Oh, wow.
I'll listen. I was listening to number 13 and number 15 this morning, and then usually I like one person more than another, but I'll listen to a couple different recordings of it just to see how so and so did something or other.
Yeah.
So I'm studying my piano technique while I'm listening, and I'm doing my sweating, and I don't have to hear all the nonsense in the gym. So it's been great.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. I didn't know Mozart piano concertos could get you like all that that energy that you need for the gym. So.
Oh, they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm listening to some of the early ones that I never heard number 3 until recently, and it's so interesting because I was trying to think what's the difference between the great Mozart piano concertos and the beautiful ones, the earlier ones, and I think that his ideas about melody changed because at the beginning he was writing in that very sort of short phrases and sort of little gestures that all add up. Occasionally he would do something amusing, something unexpected, not terribly flashy for the virtuoso. So as he got into them more, of course they got more and more complicated to play, but mostly, I was thinking, why is there so much more emotional depth here? And I think it's because there's emotional depth in melody. And then I had this other thought today, which I thought was interesting, because I was listening one I didn't know that well, and I always listen and I assume, okay, well, he's going to go here. And sometimes he does, and sometimes he doesn't. But it's always perfect, no matter where he goes. And I thought, well, what is that? And I thought, well, it's kind of like the weather. It's like the weather can't be wrong. But sometimes, you expect this and you get that. Like, a couple days ago here in New York, it was beautiful. Today it's sulfuric outside. It's just so hot and disgusting. But do you know what I'm saying? So I thought that's an interesting thing to think about when I compose. Like maybe I should try going somewhere and then imagine it's a different day. Where you get into trouble where you're composing is where you assume there's only one right place to go. There's a million, there's so many different options you have.
Right.
And as a young composer, I think I made the mistake of, like trying too hard to obfuscate what was just in front of me. Like, oh, well, I can't do that. I'll have to make this 3/4 bar into a 5/8 bar. I'll have to do something to shape this in a slightly more unexpected way. I got over that.
Yeah. Great. All right. And then we have one question that came in before we do the premiere. What's your favorite style of music to play and teach?
Play and teach. Gee, I don't have a favorite style. I have unfavorite styles. I pretty much dislike most 19th century flute music because I feel that the flute is not essentially an heroic instrument like the great, the Brahmses and I really do not want to hear an arrangement of a Brahms violin sonata on the flute. I just hate that. It just that the flute does not, aside from the tessitura being totally different, and the violin has several notes underneath the flute, and you have to jimmy them and move them around to make them work. I really don't like that. So I guess I'd say I like 18th century music and I like 20th century music, primarily 21st century music. I play my own music.
Yeah.
Because I figure, well, if I'm not going to do it, who's going to do it?
Right.
You know, I mean, if I'm not going to show people what it is, I think that should be helpful for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So skip the 19th century.
Well, no, I mean, you know, if you like it, you like it. But I just,
No, I know.
it's like, I love the Schumann romances on the oboe, but I don't want to hear them on the flute. I think they sound silly. The
Right.
flute doesn't have that probing, intense quality that the oboe has. It's a different animal. So I guess I'm talking about transcriptions, but even flute music, like I'll just say it, I really dislike pretty much everything by Reinecke. I just don't like it. I find it lousy and silly. There are little bits that are pretty, some of the tunes are nice, but I just don't like it. I love pieces like all the French songs. I love all the French songs. I love the Gautier songs. I love the Cinquante sonatine, even though it's basically, you should listen to the first Ravel violin sonata, and you'll get where the Cinquante sonatine came from. It's just so similar, it's really kind. But it's a beautiful piece on its own, you know?
Yeah.
I love all that stuff.
Great. Okay. Cool. So I think now might be a good time to switch over to this video premiere. Give me a second. And I'll see what we can
making
do.
me slightly nervous. I have to put my glasses on.
I'm excited. Okay. All right. I'm going to hide us and then I'll share the, yeah.
This is how I protect myself from unpleasantness.
I love it. Okay. want to say thank you again so much for being here with me. It was awesome chatting with you, hearing everything. I want to end with the Flutespresso Express round. So it's just like a quick series of this or that questions just for us to get to know you a little better. I feel like I already know a lot of these answers by now, but it's okay. So first we'll start with coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Oh, okay. Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Small chamber ensembles or large orchestra?
Small chamber ensembles.
Harp or piano?
Piano.
Piccolo or alto flute?
Alto flute.
Mountains or beach?
That's a tough one. I guess mountains.
Okay. Iber Concerto or Nielsen Concerto?
Nielsen.
J.S. Bach Partita or C.P. Bach Sonata?
J.S. Bach.
And books or movies?
Books.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you again. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye, everyone.